I still remember that night my sister's loud voice rang out in the quiet space while I was watching TV. "Luke, where are you? Help me." Her voice was urgent, as if there was an emergency. I quickly stood up and replied, "What's wrong?" Her voice echoed from the bathroom, mixed with a bit of confusion. "I forgot my clothes. Can you go up to my room and get them for me?" My sister was a beautiful, gentle woman but extremely forgetful. It wasn't the first time she asked me to get something for her, but this time things were different. I climbed up to my room, searched for the clothes she had left, and then took them down to the bathroom. When I knocked on the door, she opened it a little wider than usual, her hand quickly reaching out to take the clothes, but in that brief moment the bathroom light reflected on her pale skin, revealing every line of her body that I never thought I would see. I was confused and turned away immediately, but my heart was still beating wildly, and my eyes couldn't erase that image. From that day on, I began to feel a change in my heart. She was still me sister, the closest person in the house, but the strange haunting feeling from that moment kept haunting me, pushing me into a spiral of wrong thoughts. I didn't know how to face her or myself. My sister Nora is 24 years old this year. She is an extremely beautiful, confident woman who always attracts the attention of everyone around her. She has a slim figure, a delicate face, and especially a prominent, attractive waist that makes it difficult for anyone not to notice. With a liberal personality, she often chooses tight-fitting clothes whether at home or outside. Those outfits seem to highlight all of her beauty, and whether intentionally or unintentionally, they make my heart beat faster every time I see them. Since that night, the night I saw her in the bathroom through the half-open door, everything in my heart has not been the same. The pale yellow light reflecting on her white skin, the sparkling water sliding down the curves of her body, making it unforgettable for me. I know that moments should not have happened and should not have remained in me mind for so long, but that feeling, that obsession, like a ghost, haunts and never leaves. At first I tried to tell myself that everything would pass, that the image was just an unfortunate coincidence, but every night I lay in bed, what I saw that day kept appearing in my head, clear in every detail. Sometimes I would wake up in the middle of the night, cold sweat pouring down my forehead, trying to chase away the wrong thoughts that were invading my mind, but the more I tried to extinguish them, the stronger those emotions flared up like a fire that burned away my reason. Every day she still lived comfortably in our small house, completely unaware of the chaos that was happening inside me. She laughed and joked with me as usual, calling me with her familiar clear voice that I used to consider the most normal thing, but now just seeing her looking into those sparkling eyes, or sometimes smelling the gentle perfume she wore, my heart was filled with strange emotions. I couldn't explain why I was like this. I only knew that I was no longer myself. Her tight clothes made things even more difficult. When she sat on the sofa watching TV, her long legs crossed her. When she tied her hair up, revealing her long neck and bare shoulders, every little detail made me feel lost in a tangle of conflicting emotions. I felt embarrassed, ashamed, and a vague longing that I couldn't deny, even so I still tried to keep my appearances calm as possible. I talked and laughed with her as if nothing had happened. I helped her with small things around the house, chatted with her about trivial things, and sometimes even teased her to see her smile, but behind those conversations was an internal struggle that I didn't know when it would end. I didn't dare to look into her eyes for too long, afraid that she would realize something was wrong with me. One afternoon, after a long day, I decided to relax in my room by watching an adult movie. It wasn't the first time I did this, but perhaps due to my unstable mood and recent tangled thoughts, everything seemed more attractive than ever. After watching, I lay on the bed for a while, my mind in a daze, unable to erase the images and feelings that remained in my mind. Nora's sudden knock in the door pulled me back to reality. "Luke, come out here with me for a moment. Go buy some vegetables for dinner." Her voice echoed, urgent yet gentle as always. I replied, "Yes." Wait a moment, then I quickly stood up, adjusted my clothes, forgetting that I wasn't wearing underwear. When I walked down to the living room, Nora's image immediately caught my eye. She was wearing a tight shirt showing off her slim waist and short shorts revealing her long white legs. Each of those perfect lines made my mind numb. For a moment, the thoughts I had just tried to push back came rushing back like a raging wave. A strange feeling rose in my heart, a mixture of admiration and confusion that I couldn't understand. I tried to keep a calm face, push away the emotions that were surging, and approached her, but then for some reason my body reacted against my will. I felt my little guy getting erect, and even more frightening, I completely forgot that I wasn't wearing underwear. It seemed like my whole body was betraying my mind, pushing me into a situation that was both embarrassing and uncontrollable. Nora suddenly burst out laughing, her laughter resounding loudly in the quiet space. She looked at me, her eyes filled with something that was hard to explain. I was confused, not understanding what she was laughing about. "What's wrong? Is there something funny?" I asked, trying to hide my confusion, but she only laughed harder, to the point that she had to turn away so as not to look directly at me. "Luke, it's not good for you to go out like this," she said, covering her mouth, trying to hold back her laughter. I still didn't understand what was going on, standing there like a statue in the middle of the living room. While she continued to laugh, I asked, "What's wrong? Did I do something funny?" But she shook her head, trying to hold back her embarrassment. "No, it's nothing. Go upstairs. I'll go alone," she said, her voice hesitant, both serious and trying to hide something. I stood there staring at her in confusion. Why did she ask me to come with her at first and now tell her to go alone? I was filled with doubt, but I didn't know what else to ask. I returned to the room with a jumble of thoughts. As I passed the mirror, my eyes stopped, and that's when I realized what made her laugh. I wasn't wearing any underwear, and me little guy had been raising his flag for a while. My face was burning with shame. I stood still, feeling both embarrassed and not knowing what to do. Her laughter still echoed in my head. Did Nora realize it? She definitely did, otherwise she wouldn't have laughed so loudly. But why didn't she say it directly? Why did she shyly tell me to go back into the room? A series of questions popped into my head, making my heart beat faster. Was she just laughing because of this funny situation, or did she have something else in mind? I lay down on the bed, covering my face with my hands, trying to push away the awkward feeling, but the image of Nora, her laughter, and that vague confusion kept haunting me. I wondered if she thought of me the way it had of her, or was it all just a coincidence that I was doing myself? A feeling of guilt filled my heart, but at the same time a vague glimmer of hope crept in, making me unable to stop thinking about her. When Nora came home, I was still feeling embarrassed from what had just happened. Although I wasn't sure, I almost believed that she had seen something that made her laugh earlier. The more I thought about it, the more I felt my face burning as if I had just been caught doing something wrong. However, I told myself to stay calm. Toked as if nothing had happened, I decided to go down to the kitchen to prepare dinner with my sister, trying to find the usual natural atmosphere between us. As soon as he entered, I spoke up as usual. "Your back is there a lot of people at the market?" Nora didn't turn around, just answered neatly, "It's fine, but it's a bit crowded. Come in and help me." I nodded, walked over to here. She was washing the vegetables. I sat down and started breaking each branch of vegetable for her to prepare to boil. The space was quiet, only the sound of water flowing from the sink faucet, but inside me the tension was still simmering. I didn't know if she really noticed what happened just now, or if he was just making things complicated. It hot. If I didn't mention it again, everything would pass. But right at that moment, her voice rang out, making me stiffen. "Are you done yet?" I was stunned. Her words were like a blow to my already unstable mind. Even though I understood what she was implying, I didn't have the courage to face it. My whole body froze, not knowing how to react. My heart was pounding, but I still tried to pretend I didn't understand what she meant. "Oh, I finished breaking it. It should be okay, right?" She turned to look at me, her eyes mischievous and unpredictable. She smiled, nodded slightly. "Well, if you're done, leave it there. I can continue." Her voice sounded very normal, but I felt something strange in her words, a little joking, a little playful, but it made me feel extremely embarrassed. I didn't say anything more, just nodded and stood up. "Then let me go upstairs. You continue. I'm a little tired." Nora smiled slightly and said nothing more. I quietly left the kitchen, trying to walk naturally, but my heart was in turmoil. When I got back to my room, I collapsed on the bed, feeling ashamed and embarrassed. Her question kept echoing in my head, and I kept wondering if she really knew what I was thinking. I lay down on the bed, covering my face with my hands, feeling both confused and helpless. "I need to control myself. This is my sister. Nora is my sister," I repeated it as a reminder, but the image of her in the kitchen, her smile, and her teasing voice still clung to me. Unable to escape. That night, after the family had finished dinner, I returned to my room to clean up some of the clutter in the corner of my desk. It was so quiet that only the sound of insects chirping outside the window could be heard. I was busy putting away my books when I heard a light knock on the door. "Who is it?" I asked, my voice somewhat curious. "It's me, Nora," her voice echoed in soft and familiar. "Do you mind help me with something?" I quickly replied, "No problem. What do you need?" As I spoke, I walked to the door and opened it. Standing in front of me was Nora. But the first thing that caught my attention was the pajamas she was wearing. It was a light blue silk nightgown, gentle but flattering her smooth white skin. The dress had a slightly deep neck, revealing a bit of her collarbone and slender shoulders. I suddenly felt my heart skip a beat, but I tried to keep my face as normal as possible. She smiled, walked into the room holding her phone. "Something's wrong with my phone. I don't know why every time I go into the app it crashes. I tried restarting it, but it didn't work. Can you help me?" I nodded, taking the phone from her. "Let me try. It's probably just a software issue, maybe an app conflict or an operating system update." Nora stood there as natural as ever, but her presence in this small room, especially in her pajamas, made me feel confused. I looked down at my phone and started checking the settings. As I had guessed, her operating system was too old and incompatible with the new version of the application. I explained, "Your phone needs an operating system update. Let me download the new update, reinstall it, and it will be fine." "Oh really? Thank goodness. I was afraid it was broken," she said, her voice soft and relaxed. As I bent down, struggling to download the update, I felt her gaze. I reflexively glanced at her from the corner of my She wasn't looking at the phone or what I was doing, but her eyes were looking down at me. Then suddenly she smiled an unreadable smile that I couldn't understand. I paused, trying not to show me embarrassment, but inside my confusion had increased exponentially. I knew that look knew what she had just seen, but didn't dare to face it or say it. I was able to install it, I stammered, trying to break the awkward atmosphere. Oh, that fast, thanks, she replied, still keeping a slight smile on her lips. She took the phone back from my hair eyes, glancing briefly at my face as if to gauge my reaction. It's nothing, it's just a small mistake, I replied, trying to appear calm, but deep down I knew that calmness was just a facade. Her looks and small gesture tonight had left me with a wave of emotions that were hard to control. After handing the phone to Nora and thinking that everything was over, I prepared to stand up to see her out of the room, but before I could say anything she suddenly turned around, leaned against the edge of the table, and asked, her voice soft but meaningful, "Do I look beautiful, Luke?" The unexpected question made me pause, not knowing how to answer. I awkwardly smiled, trying to find a way to distract. "It's beautiful, isn't it? But why are you suddenly asking that? Is something wrong?" Nora smiled, her eyes still looking at me intently, as if trying to gauge my reaction. Then she tilted her head, saying in a teasing but somewhat serious tone, "Did you just see me? That's why you saluted?" Her words were like a thunderbolt. I felt all the blood rush to me face, my heart pounding, and my whole body was confused and didn't know what to do. I quickly shook my head and denied it immediately. "No, it's not like that, what are you thinking?" But her eyes still didn't leave me. Her slight smile made me even more embarrassed. She moved closer step by step, making me feel like this small room was shrinking. I stepped back, trying to keep my distance, but then she suddenly lunged forward, her two hands holding Miss Holders, her face only a few centimeters away from mine. "Luke, what are you afraid of? We're both adults. I know what you're thinking. I've seen it all." I turned away, not daring to look at her. "Nora, what are you talking about? Stop joking, it's not funny." But she didn't stop. She moved closer and closer. I could feel her warm breath on me neck, which made me more nervous than ever. "Luke, why are you avoiding me? I know you want me to." Nora's voice was soft, but her words were like a knife piercing me. Mind the air seemed to thicken, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it was about to escape. "My kissed, don't say it," I said, my voice trembling, but strong enough to stop the growing danger. I stepped back, creating distance between us, my eyes tensely looking straight at her. "Do you know what you're saying? This is wrong." "Nora, you're Remy's sister." Her eyes flashed with hurt, but only for a moment. She took a step forward, her voice low, almost pleading. "Luke, don't lie to yourself. I see it all in your eyes. You don't have to hide your feelings, and you don't have to pretend." I felt my whole body freeze, but my mind was still strong enough to resist. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm despite my confusion. "And Ferno, you're wrong. I don't think like that. I don't want that. We're brothers, we're family." She stopped, her face showing disappointment and shame. Her eyes searched mine, searching for some sign to continue, but I held my gaze, determined not to give her a chance to go further. Finally she turned away, her eyes avoiding her, as if she dared not face reality. Her voice faded to a whisper filled with remorse. "I'm sorry, I didn't know why I'm like this. Maybe I should go back to my room." She turned and walked out. Each heavy step seemed to drag the suffocating atmosphere that remained in the room. When the door closed, I sat down on the bed, feeling like I had just escaped a big storm. My mind was in a mess with no way out. Nora's words still echoed in my head, each sentence and each word seemed to touch the darkest corners of me. She said that I wanted her to, that I didn't need to pretend. Those words seemed to expose the feelings that I had tried to hide, feelings that even I myself didn't want to admit. She was right, I couldn't deny that. After those seemingly unintentional moments, I had wrong thoughts about her. But no matter how strong my emotions were, my reason was still enough to remind me she was my sister, and we could never cross that line. I understood how dangerous this situation was. Every word and action offers tonight had shaken the fragile boundary between us. If I didn't stay rational, if I let myself go just once, everything would collapse beyond repair. I sat in the empty room, feeling my heart being squeezed by torment. I didn't know whether to blame her or blame myself for letting things go this far. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay on the bed, staring at the dark ceiling, thinking about everything that had happened in just one short day. The relationship between me and her had changed so much. I remembered her eyes, her smile, her contradictory hidden words. She was the person I had always respected, the person I considered the closest to me, but now everything had become so complicated that I didn't dare to think about what tomorrow would bring. I asked myself, if I continue to stay here, will there come a day when I can no longer control myself? I understood that human emotions, no matter how strong, cannot overcome temptation if they are allowed to persist. Nora was too close, too familiar, but also too dangerous. If I did not create distance, I was afraid that only all boundaries would be completely broken. After a long night off thinking, I decided to do something bold. I knew that there was only one way to protect myself and Nora from making an irreversible mistake. I had to leave and needed to move out, create enough distance so that these emotions would no longer have a chance to develop. This was not only the way to solve the current problem, but also the Only way to protect the beautiful family relationship between us. The next morning, while the family was having breakfast, I decided to tell them my intention. My voice was serious, but also confused. Mom and Dad, I think I'm going to move out. My father put down his teacup and looked at me with surprise. Why do you suddenly want to go out? You are still young. Wouldn't it be more convenient to stay at home? Is something wrong? My mother also looked at me, her eyes worried. Luke, is something wrong, or do you feel uncomfortable at home? Just tell us, don't be shy. I tried to smile to reassure my parents even though I was conflicted inside. No, Mom and Dad, I just feel like I am grown up now and need to be more independent. I think going out will help me learn to manage myself and prepare me better for the future. My father frowned as if he was thinking hard, but finally nodded. If you have decided, so then we respect it, but remember, if you encounter any difficulties you must tell us immediately. Home is always the place for you to return. Turn to my mother, seemed more worried but did not object. You Javito, take good care of yourself. Do you need any help finding a house, moving things, or anything? Just tell me. I nodded, relieved that my parents did not object too strongly. Although I knew they were worried, I remained steadfast in my decision. That day I began looking for a small apartment to move into. Despite the turmoil of emotions, I knew that this was the best thing for both Nora and May. Needed time and space to work through these feelings, to be myself again, and to protect the peace in the family. From what I had experienced, I realized an important lesson. Emotions are difficult to control, but not uncontrollable. Moments of weakness can cause us to be swept up in vague feelings, easily crossing the boundaries of morality and family relationships. However, being aware of right and wrong and remaining rational are the decisive factors in avoiding irreparable mistakes. I understand that accepting your emotions is not wrong, but knowing how to sit them within the right limits, sometimes creating distance, is not torn away, but to protect more important values: love, respect, and self-esteem. The biggest lesson I learned is courage is not always about facing, but sometimes knowing how to leave to keep the best things. The decision to leave a dangerous situation is not a sign of weakness, but a necessary action to protect yourself and those around you from being hurt. Through the story, I have a piece of advice for everyone in life. We cannot avoid unexpected situations that give rise to uncontrollable emotions. These emotions, whether fleeting or long-lasting, can lead to mistakes if we do not know how to handle them properly. Therefore, my advice is always stay rational and aware of boundaries in every relationship. When you feel yourself getting caught up in an emotional spiral that is beyond your control, stop and ask yourself, is this emotion worth trading the precious things I have? Sometimes mindfulness and self-reflection will help you realize that acting on your emotions can destroy the values you hold dear, such as family relationships, honor, or self-esteem. If you find it difficult to control yourself, don't be afraid to distance yourself or seek support from family, friends, or a mental health professional. Avoidance is not weakness, but a way to protect yourself from deeper hurt. Remember, the decisions you make today can affect your future and the future of those around you. Maintaining boundaries, respecting your morals and values is the best way to live a peaceful and happy life. My story ends here. Thank you for listening to this story. See you again in the next videos.